and welcome to the 11. Thanks for watching on the 12 News streaming app. This is the show at 11 o'clock where we don't just report the news, we tell you what it means and what it means to you. I'm William Pitts, and joined right now for our desk check. For a change, we actually have the desk on the desk. Dan Siegel on the desk.
Usually the desk check is at my desk. Today the desk check is at this desk.
The desk.
So there you go.
Exactly. Okay, so we are tracking a couple of things. I'm going to fire right off to Sky 12 out here. What is this? Because this looks bad.
This is live breaking news. We got a couple of lanes closed on the eastbound 303 near Lake Pleasant Parkway for a rolled over cement mixer. We're told minor to no injuries for the driver, but obviously a visual mess out there. And so that's west of TSMC up in the far Northwest Valley.
Obviously one lane closed. Looks like that's a lot of gravel too. That's going to take a while to clean up.
It rolled over and dragged for a bit. So yeah, they'll have to get a crane out there to lift that. But at least there's still other lanes open, so it's not fully closed off.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we should say, by the way, that usually we have 3 things to desk check, but this just happened, so now we have 4. Okay, what else are we looking at today?
Special day.
Exactly.
Had a house fire this morning that reporter Tori King was at up in Peoria near 83rd Avenue and Pinnacle Peak. Obviously a total loss on the house. We were told out there this could be an arson situation, so we'll be having a report from Tori in the 1 o'clock show and following this through the day.
Okay, that's a lot of damage. I didn't really get a look at how big this house is. That's a large house, and there is not a whole lot left of this thing.
No, this is on a county island, so this is going to be a Maricopa County Sheriff's Office investigation.
Gotcha. And, you know, really lucky with all those trees around there, it didn't catch any of those and didn't spread to those houses, because they're kind of close, too.
It is nice. These are ranch properties out there, so there's a lot of room for it to run and not be like subdivisions that are on top of each other.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, more on that coming up at 1. All right, What else we got?
And then we got 2 shootings we had. It's a big day on the scanners this morning. Lots of breaking news. There's a shooting at 37th Ave near Camelback involving a teen. Fortunately, non-life-threatening injuries on that one. And then a fatal shooting in Chandler apartment complex near Germain and McQueen. Apparently, do have someone in custody for that. Big scene in Chandler this morning. We're following all that and see how it goes through the day.
A lot more, obviously, and that as we go back here to Sky 12, and you can see what we're dealing with here. First of all, for the size of truck that is, I mean, that is it's a cement mixer. I mean,
correct.
There's no other,
Yep.
no other thing it could be. That thing is going to be heavy, and I mean, I hate to say this, but if they don't move it before that concrete sets up, that's going to be really, really hard to get. Thankfully, looks like there's a crane off to the right-hand side. You've got some DPS guys standing off to the side there. But they're going to have to flip it up onto its wheels. They're going to have to figure out how to tow this thing out, which is going to take a little while. Then you got to clean the road also. So if you're in the 303, which shockingly for 1102, it looks like there are a lot of people driving on the 303 right now. You definitely need to avoid that area. Find another. There's not too many other ways around this, but you definitely got to find a couple. I mean, I would suggest take the 101 if you can. 101, 17, 303, maybe Lake Pleasant Parkway and get around it.
At that point, if you're on the 303, the only other choice you have would be to go north to Carefree Highway and go across.
You're kind of stuck at that point. You see those 2. Wow, we got 2 wreckers now. So hopefully this is getting toward the area where it can be cleaned up, cleared up, and gotten away from here. So you'll be in some pretty smooth sailing, hopefully fairly quickly. All right, Dan Siegel, thank you very much for our desk check. Now let's move on to our big story. All right, our big story, and I don't think it's going to shock too many people, is going to be Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, because it has been 6 months since she was last seen, January 31st, last seen at dinner. Here's a timeline of the case. On February 1st, you might remember, her doorbell camera was disconnected at 1:47. Then her family discovered that she was missing late in the morning. Now, fast forward to February 2nd. That's when the first ransom note was received. And we've had a couple of those since then, we know. Then February 4th, the family releases a plea on video. Savannah Guthrie has released a bunch of those ever since. Now, the second ransom note was received on the 6th. February 10th was when those infamous photos from the doorbell camera were recovered. Remember when those came out? They were absolutely terrifying and kind of shocking to everybody. Then February 16th, all the family members were cleared as suspects, leaving no suspects, frankly, suspects in the wind. Then February 24th, the Guthrie family announces a $1 million reward for information. So there you see her right there, Nancy Guthrie, age 84 when she disappeared, and she has been missing for the last 6 months from her home in Tucson in the Catalina foothills. And we are going to bring in Tram Mai, who was down there. And also, so that everybody knows, we have three, actually, people today talking to. John Iannarelli also is going to be here with us, former FBI agent who is going to talk to us a little bit about how this case is going, things that are outstanding, the investigation in general, how you investigate cases like this. So, John, I do want to start with you. 6 months out, what is the likelihood that this actually gets solved after 6 months?
I still believe firmly the case is going to be solved. It's just a matter of time. That one clue we're looking for, that person who has a piece of information, picks up the phone, calls the FBI, that could be the catalyst that could break this wide open.
And this is going to be one of these situations where we hope that something happens. I know Chris Nanos was talking about the DNA possibilities, the hair possibilities, and actually, John, they said that they didn't really get much out of that hair, right?
Yeah, it looks like it might have been hair from somebody else that it was dismissed as a possible subject. But again, that's an example of how thorough law enforcement is being. They're not leaving any stone unturned. They're looking at anything that could possibly be evidentiary to help break this case.
Now, Tram, you were down there for a day or two in this whole investigation, just swarmed with every media, police,
international media,
investigators, everything. Are you surprised that this is still going on? 6 months later, we're talking about the disappearance and no recovery, no suspects?
Yeah, not only am I surprised, but I'm also saddened for the family, right? I mean, it's one of those things where this is a case that stands out because so many people around the world know Savannah Guthrie. Mm-hmm. And she has, been in people's living rooms on a daily basis. The fact that she has shown her mother repeatedly over the years. We know that Tucson, obviously her home, near and dear to her heart.
We know they were very close. She's been on the Today Show.
Exactly. Such a tight bond. And to think that something could happen to her mother is just, it's heartbreaking. It's devastating. And her emotional pleas it's just so hard to watch. And you could just feel that anguish, right? And so I guess, John, what surprises me, the fact that here we are 6 months later, and there are still, to this day, no substantial clues. I mean, how is that? Especially when, you look back at that abductor, that alleged abductor on that Ring camera, and everyone was analyzing his gait, his mannerisms, what he did, his movements, everything. And, so many experts were saying that he just didn't look like a trained professional, right? And so it's one of those things where how is it that someone seems so amateur, but yet here we are
so
6 months later, yeah, it's still not solved.
One of the theories is this person is a loner, doesn't have a lot of friends, doesn't have family, lives by himself, perhaps has some sort of employment that he's not coming in contact with people. With that, people aren't noticing unusual behavior, nervousness, or have seen this person to be able to say, hey, that's the individual I see on the video camera. But like everybody, he's got to surface at some point. Somebody's going to see something and they're going to say something. Sometimes criminals just get lucky, but luck runs out and eventually he's going to get caught.
Do you think in this case that one person, as you said, maybe perhaps a loner, do you think that there could be even more suspects involved in this case, that it just wasn't a one-man job?
There's a possibility, and there was a lot of speculation that this was a two-person job. However, Mrs. Guthrie isn't a very large person. It would be easy for a person to transport her away from the scene and do whatever. So it could be a lone individual. If there were two involved, the good news is one usually flips on the other. Somebody's going to get in trouble, wants to cut themselves a deal, and they're willing to coordinate with law enforcement and say, in exchange for immunity, this is what I can give you. Either way, it's a matter of time. It's been a long time, but it's going to be resolved.
So here we are 6 months later. Give us kind of the snapshot of what the FBI, of what the sheriff's deputies, of where this case is now and how they're working on it 6 months later.
Well, first and foremost, they're waiting for that phone call. Somebody who has a piece of information. In the beginning, there were literally thousands of leads, all of which have been vetted out. Yet there might be that other piece of information somebody has yet to call in. At the same time, they're taking a look at the leads they've already covered. Is there anybody else they need to go back and talk to another time? Is there another area that they need to rewalk to see if any evidence is left behind? They're going to look at those leads to see if anything was possibly missed to make sure they're covering everything. And then finally, one of the things the Guthrie family is doing a great job of, keeping it in the public light. As long as people are aware of this case and don't forget, somebody's going to hear something, see something, and then they're going to say something.
Yeah, John, how important is that to keep that out there and make sure that this doesn't kind of get stale? I mean, I think there's probably something to be said about not oversaturating the market so that nobody cares anymore, but to keep it in the public eye so that you still keep getting tips. Are those still helpful 6 months later? And how much does Savannah going and doing Instagram videos help kind of keep the case going?
I think Savannah Guthrie has found the perfect balance. Fortunately, with her media training, she understands that you don't want oversaturation, but it's just enough that we think about it almost every single day. That if somebody sees something, they're going to think, hey, maybe this is related to the Guthrie disappearance and I want to do what I need to do. It's very important because if you and I weren't talking about this now, people would forget and they would not pay attention to those clues that can solve this case.
Now, that $1 million reward that was given out, is that helpful, or does that just make everybody come out of the woodwork and say, yeah, of course, I know everything about this case. I know everything. Just give me the money. I'll tell you all about it. Or does this actually get you credible information?
It does both, unfortunately. We do have the people that want to come out and profit. When you look at some of the ransom demands, there's already been arrests of people who claim they had information or claim they knew something about the case and were looking to just fraudulently profit from what had taken place. At the same time, you had a lot of those armchair sleuths that are looking at this case, and the money is a motivator to keep people involved, to want to pick up the phone and maybe make a call where they otherwise might say, I don't want to get involved. It's somebody else's problem to deal with. So that money will keep an interest in going, hopefully getting clues that will solve the matter sooner than later.
John, I'm wondering, you've been with the FBI for quite some time now. In your experience, what strikes you the most about this case? What is unique about it? How is it different or similar to other cases that you've handled?
Well, I've been personally involved in kidnapping cases that went on for years before it was solved because of one piece of critical evidence that finally came forth. It's very common in what we're seeing here. We have the proximity to the Mexican border, which makes it very easy for someone to cross the border and take another person with them to that location. That complicates everything dramatically. The FBI and the Pima County Sheriff just can't cross the border and start conducting searches. Everything has to be done in conjunction with foreign law enforcement. So those complications are something we've seen repeatedly in the FBI and in law enforcement circles, but we also have the relationships with these law enforcement agencies. The FBI has a great working relationship with the Mexican authorities who have been very cooperative in this matter. If other evidence is uncovered, there's an area to search, that's going to happen.
So, John, I want to ask you about those relationships, because one of the things that, from an investigative standpoint, unfortunately, has come up is this, I guess, criticism. I don't want to say infighting, but some sort of criticism between the FBI and the sheriff's office down there. The FBI director has criticized the Pima County Sheriff's Office for delaying, basically bringing in the FBI, saying they should have done it sooner. There's, criticism back and forth with what Sheriff Nanos has done with the FBI's actions. That can't help the investigation to be able to have these agencies kind of going back and forth and sniping at each other, right?
Well, it's certainly a distraction, but I'll tell you, a lot of the distraction is what we're seeing in the public eye. The reality is the FBI is there to respond. Now, we don't necessarily have jurisdiction in the FBI in every single case. In this case in particular, it required the invitation of the Sheriff's Department for the FBI to lend its resources. And that's the case across the board with the FBI. One of our federal jurisdictions is to assist local law enforcement, but we have to be requested in an official manner. The delay in bringing the FBI in certainly is not helpful. The fact is, you want the best law enforcement agency in the world with the most resources getting on the scene as quickly as possible. We see that in most cases. Unfortunately, a little late to the game here, but all this personal stuff is not an issue for the agents on the ground. Their only mission is solving this case and finding Mrs. Guthrie.
So did that jeopardize the fact that the FBI was brought in a little bit later than what would have, been desirable from the get-go? Did that have an effect on this case and, clues that maybe, were jeopardized or what have you?
Great question, and we probably won't know the answer until the case is fully resolved and we can look at what solved this investigation. I will tell you, the FBI has protocols and procedures of creating a crime scene and holding that crime scene and not releasing it. For example, we look at the scene down with the Gabby Gifford shooting in Tucson. The FBI was given jurisdiction of that very quickly by the Attorney General of the United States. We held that scene for 7 days. Now, we already had a shooter in custody. We had removed victims. We processing evidence. But we were sure to not give up the scene to make sure we had got every possible piece of evidence. Those are some of the protocols that agents are trained in and why they do such a good job and why they should be brought in on these major types of investigations.
And I want to bring Tram into this again because, Tram, you were down there, and one of the things that I remember from when this whole thing started, we sent a reporter down there the morning that she was, declared missing. Mm-hmm. He was the only one there. There was nobody else there. I think there was a police officer at the end of the road.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of media.
Right.
Reporters were literally walking up to the front door because they didn't know if they had the right house. There was no crime scene tape.
Right.
It was almost like, did we get the right area? Are we in the right house?
And I think that's what blew away so many reporters from different stations, not just us, right? The fact that the crime scene tape was taken down
and
so
then went
soon.
back up again.
Yes. And so, I mean, John, what does that say? Did they make a mistake in taking down the crime scene tape too early?
Well, I hate to second guess anybody on the scene. And let's remember, too, Pima County, they have limited number of resources and they have a huge jurisdiction to cover. So there may be a lot of different reasons for how this case was handled. But from the FBI perspective, you set up a crime scene and you secure that crime scene until such time you determine absolutely nothing else has to be done. In this case, we saw that we were going back and having the FBI collect evidence. We were looking for the Ring camera video, for example, looking at possible DNA. And even now, we're looking at hair samples that have since been proven not to be related to the case, but yet potential evidence that needed to be collected.
John, I do want to talk about that Ring doorbell camera because that was, when that came out, I think everybody kind of was in shock, first of all, at the images, because that's one of the creepiest videos I have ever seen in more than 20 years of news, but also that it was able to be obtained was kind of a shock to everybody. I think everybody thought, and probably whoever did this thought, if I take the doorbell camera, that's it. There's no record of it at all. And for a while, I think everybody thought that too. How big a deal was it to be able to pull that information, the images, the video, off of, well, frankly, wherever they got it from, the cloud, something like that? How big a deal was that?
Well, it's huge. And this is, again, one of the things about the FBI with the specific training and what agents are able to do because of the laboratory resources. I will tell you, in today's electronic world, nothing is actually deleted or eliminated. It can be found if you know where to look for it. Now, it may be parsed into pieces. Hard for the general public to understand that doesn't have cyber training, but you'll have images scattered across a server. The FBI and other technical people can go in and pull those together. Most people, and including the criminals, don't realize that is available as a law enforcement tool. It was a great thing for the FBI able to bring into this case. And when a subject is finally taken into custody, we're going to be able to match those images up to the person that we have. Without the FBI's efforts, that would not even exist.
Yeah, I think we knew you were good. I don't think we knew you were that good, which is kind of impressive. I mean, you know, this is some like NCIS, FBI, you know, kind of thing that I didn't know that anybody could do. So I want to move on to the ransom notes also, because how do you determine whether or not this is actually legit? How do you know any of these are real?
Well, you have to vet them all out. And clearly, there's a lot of things from a technical side you can see that might indicate this is not a legitimate ransom note. Where did it originate from? Did it come from overseas versus coming from someplace nearby, etc.? And of course, whether or not it's legit, if somebody's communicating a ransom, they're a part of a crime. If they actually kidnap someone, they're the kidnappers. If they're claiming to have kidnapped and just seeking the money, well, they're perpetrating a fraud. And that's going to give the FBI and other law enforcement agencies jurisdiction to check all this out and hold these people accountable. The people who are sending out these false ransom notes are as heinous as the actual kidnappers. They're creating false hope for the family, and they're wasting law enforcement resource time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a special place for somebody who's trying to profit off of something like this and trying to make money off of Savannah Guthrie, the Guthrie family's heartbreak.
It's very, very sick. But you know, John, there were 2 ransom notes that were sent to the station down in Tucson, and I'm wondering, you know, clearly they were. Well, it seemed as though they were related. One obviously asking for Bitcoin money, right, in USD dollars. That was a little strange too. That was a odd, you know, indicator. But then the second one had said that shortly afterwards, that said that she had deceased. I mean, that she had died in the process of it and all. I mean, what was there legitimacy in those 2 ransom notes?
From what I know, and I've seen historically in cases like this, if a person was involved in the kidnapping, number one, they're not going to be sending ransom notes to the media. You don't want to bring the media in. You want to keep it quiet. What you and I are doing right now does not help the kidnapper. So they would have contacted the family directly. If they knew enough how to kidnap someone, they'd know how to get in touch with family members as well. So it's more than likely people that were looking to profit off of these crimes. As far as the messages, well, she's now deceased and I'll give you the information if you pay me. Again, they're speculating on the same thing everybody in the general public is speculating on. So it's not evidentiary. It's not, oh, we found the right person in doing this. And then finally, nobody's looking to do anything to be a good human being and help the family. They're looking to profit. Pay me in Bitcoin and I'll tell you where she is. So it's criminals at work. And sadly, we see them in all crimes. Here, it's just so high profile, it's on everybody's radar.
And John, we got about a minute left. I want to ask you one question based on everything, all of your experience, what you know and what we know about this case, the videos, the photos, the suspect, all of this. Do you think this guy actually knew what he was doing, or do you think this was an amateur that is now so far over his head?
You know, the problem with stupid criminals is they think they're geniuses. They don't know what they don't know, and they assume they have all the answers. I suspect this person has gotten very lucky, but not particularly intelligent. Thought that this would be a great crime to commit and didn't realize that it would garner all this attention when things didn't go well. So because of that, he's going to get caught. He's going to trip up. He's going to do something. And when that happens, we're going to have the answers to what's happened to Mrs. Guthrie.
Eventually. It's going to take a little time, but hopefully that actually does happen. All right, John Iannarelli, former FBI agent, thank you so much. Tram Mai, thanks for joining me here on the desk.
Yeah, great to be with you.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. We're going to move on right now to our next segment called The Follow-Up. All right, our follow-up today is about a story that, frankly, a lot of us have been talking about here, and that is, and this is going to sound strange, it's a Pokemon theft. And I know what you're thinking. Who cares about stealing Pokemon cards? After you see this, I'm going to tell you how much Pokemon cards and these collector cards are worth, and it's absolutely going to blow your mind.
There are cards in there and in a lot of Pokemon boxes that are 1 in a million, and if you pull it, it's like winning the lottery.
It is absolutely like winning the lottery. If you saw this, and this is not Pokemon, but it's a sports card, this Shohei Ohtani card that was pulled, there's one of one. The thing was immediately sold for more than $1 million, immediately. That's how much we're talking about. Now, this was a smash and grab about 2 a.m. at Game Outpost. This guy broke in, just dumped all the Pokemon merchandise he could find into a cardboard box and then left. Under 5 minutes this whole thing took. Cleared out the Pokemon, but then didn't grab anything else, which made me wonder, all right, how much is Pokemon actually worth? Well, the store says they lost between $5,000 and $10,000, and it's really hard to replace these things. You can't just reorder all of these cards. But take a look at this. So the entire market of collector cards is worth $52 to $90 billion with a B. Billion with a B. The all-time record for a Pokemon card, and this is just one that was, pulled out of a regular pack. $16.49 million in February of 26. The most expensive trading card of any kind ever sold. $16 million. You could buy one of the most expensive houses in Arizona for that. It was I don't know much about Pokemon, so apologies to everybody who does. A Pikachu Illustrator PSA graded 10. That's what this was. Magic the Gathering cards. The most expensive one sold $3 million. Most expensive sports cards is millions and millions of dollars. Like, these things go for a ton of money. So for anybody to break into this place and steal Pokemon, they were hoping to catch something. If you, by the way, know who this is, definitely contact police. I know he was wearing a mask, and it's very difficult to see. But if you do know who that is, contact the police. All right, now we're going to end, as we always do here on the 11, with one good thing. Our one good thing to leave you with on your day. And this is going to be something that you're not expecting, okay? This is something called a pony swim. You've heard of a polar plunge. This is not that. You ready for this?
Pony swim is great. Everyone should come do it.
Yes.
It's a magical
And donate
thing.
a lot of money to take care of them.
Yes.
It is exactly what it looks like. It is Virginia's Eastern Shore, where wild ponies cross. It's Virginia. I can't pronounce half of these words. I believe it's the Assateague Channel. I'm not really sure. It is an annual tradition that goes back to 1927, and apparently was from a book. A book made this famous, 1947 novel by Marguerite Henry. And it was about a pony named Misty owned by a real family, bought for $150. Then there was a pony swim involved in the book. Well, every year the ponies are rounded up by the Saltwater Cowboys, a group of volunteer firefighters, and they've been doing this since 1927. And they all herd them into the water. Yes, by the way, horses can swim. Horses can swim really well. Just go to the Salt River. You'll see a whole bunch of horses in the water there. And then they go in the water and they just cross the river. That's not just so that everybody can, gawk at the horses that are crossing the river and swimming and look, a swimming horse. No, they actually do raise money for the volunteer fire company around here. It also helps control the herd's population, which is great in itself, but also, to raise money for the volunteer firefighters and fire department. After the swim, these horses get to dry off. And remember, they're wild, so that's why they're being herded by cowboys on horseback. They're not tame. You're not exactly going to slap a saddle on these guys and ride them. They are paraded through town, and then they get to stay at the carnival grounds for 2 whole nights. So they get pampered. They get a little staycation, which is amazing. The Saltwater Cowboys. Now, that tradition predates this book by 20 years. So for 20 years, they were doing this just because. And then in the 1940s, this book apparently made this entire thing famous. It is this book, by the way, Mystery of, and I am, again, going to butcher this Virginia name, Misty of, I believe it's Chincoteague, I'm not sure. This is the second best-selling horse book in America. Who knew we were actually paying attention to best-selling horse books in America? But it is the second best-selling horse book in America after Black Beauty, which is why so many people apparently are paying attention to this. So for our one good thing, we're going to leave you with video of a bunch of wild horses swimming across a channel. Fantastic. All right. That's going to do it for us here on the 11. Thanks for watching the show on the 12 News streaming app and on YouTube. We're on YouTube now. We're going to be back for 12 News at 1, 12 News at 4, 5, and 6. And remember, since we did spend a large part of the show on the Nancy Guthrie case, we do have our special, The Search for Nancy Guthrie, that is on the 12 News streaming app right now. You can check that out as well. We'll see you right back here on Monday for the 11th.